Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and privilege to present to you the Greg Jones story. And to narrate this, I would like to introduce my good friend, my partner, and the best looking of the lot, Dr. Therese Duane, who has been with us for a few years, who was the attending physician for this particular Mr. Jones, and took care of him and got him here today. So to narrate this story, here is Dr. Duane.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is without a doubt the worst nightmare a parent could experience. On a warm night in April, that nightmare hits home with a violent crash. A beloved son's life hangs in the balance after a car in which he was riding rolls multiple times and crashes into a large tree, uprooting the tree and nearly cutting the car in half. For Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the nightmare started with a phone call.
Greg was with this other young man. They were just test driving this car. They were going down the road, and I guess his friend, who's friends with these other people, came down the road behind them a little bit later and came across the accident. But before that, I think they went into someone's yard, and that person came out to see if everybody was okay and called 911.
We were dispatched for a motor vehicle accident, kind of outside of our district. When the additional information came in, we learned that there were potentially two patients, one being ejected from the vehicle and one still entrapped in the vehicle. So at that point, we decided, hey, let's take 2 units on this call because it sounded pretty bad. Once we got on scene, we found a car that had gone onto its side, slid into a tree, and kind of bent around the tree. We found one patient entrapped in the back seat of the car, with the roof kind of caved down on him. And then we found one other patient off into the woods. He was entrapped, so we kind of got him oxygen, got him set up, and then we started the extrication process and getting him out of the car. The main thing we were focusing on was the fact he was unconscious and he had some labored breathing. Usually with an accident call this bad with entrapment, we'll take him to VCU Medical Center. That's usually our first priority. Also with entrapment and due to distance, we decided, hey, we need to call med flight.
We lifted off, I think, in approximately 6 or 7 minutes, airborne to Hanover, immediately had communications. Once we got there, Hanover Fire Department was just extricating Mr. Jones. We decompressed the chest at that time, proceeded to do a rapid sequenced intubation. We gave him the medications, we intubated, got him loaded in the helicopter. He developed a tension pneumothorax again. We decompressed his chest a second time.
One of the things that I find challenging with the med-flight program and a patient like this is to be able to anticipate what's the patient going to do, try to stay 1 or 2 steps ahead. That helps relieve the stress, and so you can give optimal patient care.
Despite the highly focused work by the rescue team of Christopher Parrish, Dale Rollison, and Megan McGee of Hanover Fire and EMS, Greg Jones is already showing signs of decompensation. His mental status is becoming more impaired. He's comatose and requires airway control. The secure airway provided by the rescue team is not enough to stabilize him. The prolonged effort to extract Greg from the car becomes the defining obstacle to all the heroic efforts to revive him, both before he gets to the hospital and after. As the med-flight team of Pilot Trooper Vincent Moncano and EMTs Bill Schlack and Dave Schweiger race to the VCU Medical Center, our trauma team prepares for his arrival. To complicate matters even further, our emergency department and trauma departments are having a very busy night. Doctors Hala Akbarina and Jessica Morton, along with nurse Beth Solcheski are triaging and treating the victims. Multiple patients are coming at once. We have to think fast, be prepared, and prioritize the victims to identify who is at immediate risk of death. Greg Jones is that patient.
So we landed on the roof at VCU. We did what was determined a hot offload, which means we don't shut the helicopter down. Once in the elevator, we realized that he was experiencing more difficulty for us to bag him with the ventilator. We then decompressed the chest a third time.
Given his problems with his oxygenation, we had to move to a definitive airway and therefore put in an endotracheal tube and intubate him that way. Once that was done, he was still having problems with oxygenation, and although we knew our airway was intact, then we moved to B, which is breathing. So a chest tube was placed to hopefully improve his breathing. We started manipulating the ventilator, increasing his support very quickly. At the same time, as we're dealing with B for breathing, we're dealing with C for circulation. He is grossly hypotensive. His blood pressure is in life-threatening range.
We were coming from Reedville. I called my sister, and she said that they were taking him in for exploratory surgery.
I actually was able to talk to them very briefly when I made the decision he had to go up to the operating room. And I basically said, I've got to take him up to the operating room. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I don't know what I'm going to have to do for him. And I'll speak to you as soon as I can. And that was essentially the extent of the conversation. Because at that point, I knew I had to go into his chest. I knew I was probably going to have to resect some of his lung, but I didn't know if I was going to have to, if he was bleeding in his abdomen. And we didn't know if, regardless of what I did, or what the team as a whole was doing, was going to be enough.
When we received the call that we have a trauma patient coming up, we have a case cart that's ready to go from general surgery to thoracic to make sure that we will be ready in case we need to open the belly, chest.
In the OR, Greg is grossly unstable. A tree branch has penetrated into his right lung, tearing a hole in the tissue. The hemorrhage is massive, requiring resection of part of his lung to control the bleeding. His body does not respond as it should, and he continues to be unstable. Fortunately, nurses Ida Flora Cabulana and Dawn A. Heron are ready for anything, having instruments open and on the table. We turn our attention to his abdomen to look for another source of his instability and perform an exploratory laparotomy, evaluating the inside of his abdomen for major sites of hemorrhage. None are found. In the meantime, the anesthesiologists, led by Gordon Kerr, are struggling to keep up with his oxygen and blood product requirements using the massive transfusion protocol.